Hi there. Here, we turn psychology books into clear, thoughtful audio journeys so you can understand the mind, one idea at a time. Feel free to subscribe for more. Let's dive in together.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is the place where we dig into the sources, pull out the key insights, and basically give you the operating manual so you can get up to speed quickly.
And today we are tackling an idea that is, it's deceptively simple on the surface, but when you really get into it, it's got this monumental power.
Right, we're talking about the surprising, almost transformative potential of making tiny changes.
Exactly. This is a deep dive into, really, the foundational concepts of how we build and break habits. We're focusing on this idea that tiny changes, remarkable results, isn't just some, motivational poster.
It's a framework.
It's a proven framework. And the core material we're looking at calls these small actions atomic habits.
And our mission for this deep dive is to unpack why these marginal gains, these little things you do every day that seem so insignificant, why they are actually the fundamental building blocks of success.
And not just outward success, right? We're talking about personal fulfillment, about lasting change. It's about showing you the instruction manual for changing your life, one tiny little step at a time.
Okay, so to really get this, we can't just start with a theory. The source material grounds this whole thing in a really personal and life-altering story.
Yeah. It's a pretty traumatic origin story, actually, and it's what makes the point so powerfully. It's about persistence and how these tiny gains compound.
So let's unpack this. The story starts on the final day of his sophomore year of high school. He's an athlete, he's practicing baseball, and then this just horrific accident happens.
Yeah, a baseball bat slips out of a classmate's hands during a swing.
And hits him directly in the face.
Directly in the face. And the impact was, it was immediate and just devastating. The force was enough to fracture his skull in multiple places. It crushed his nose into a distorted U shape, shatter both of his eye sockets. And because of that sheer force, his brain literally slams against the inside of his skull. You get this rapid, dangerous swelling.
He lost consciousness right there on the field, basically, before the ambulance even got there.
And the medical response tells you everything you need to know about how severe this was. They get him stabilized, but then he's immediately flown by helicopter to a major trauma center.
And the swelling in his brain was so extreme that the doctors, they had to induce a medical coma.
Right. Put him on a ventilator just to stabilize him and, hope for the best.
And when he finally woke up, the cognitive damage was just, it's terrifying to read about.
Yeah, the injury had basically erased these huge chunks of his memory. When they asked him what year it was, he said 1998.
But it was 2002.
It was 2002. He couldn't remember his own mother's name. He said Bill Clinton was the president, not George W. Bush, just gone.
So the recovery from that must have been just brutal.
Slow and brutal. He had multiple seizures after the trauma. For weeks, he had double vision. He had to go through physical therapy just to relearn how to, walk in a straight line.
Basic motor patterns.
Exactly. His sense of smell just vanished, maybe forever, and his face was, permanently changed.
But that's just the physical side. The psychological hit, the hit to his identity as an athlete, that was almost worse in a way.
For sure. A year later, he's determined, right? He wants to get back. He tries out for the varsity baseball team as a junior.
And he was the only junior cut from the team.
The only one. He calls it humiliating. He spent most of his senior year on the bench, played, I think the number was 11 innings of varsity baseball in his entire high school career.
So by any measure, he's defeated, he's sidelined, it's over.
It looks that way, but this is the pivot. This is where the system starts to emerge. He enrolls at Denison University. He's not some star recruit. He's just happy to have a spot on the team.
And this is where he stops focusing on the big, overwhelming goal, like, I have to be a star again.
Right. He shifts his focus to these tiny, controllable actions, things that gave him back a sense of control that the injury had just stolen from him.
He started really small, didn't he? Building habits that are almost too minor to even talk about.
Exactly. He started by focusing on his sleep habits, just getting good sleep. He made sure his messy dorm room was neat and tidy, a small win, but it was a win every single day.
And his study habits, too. He got consistent with those, enough to get straight A's his first year.
And he paired all of that with consistent weight training. And again, it wasn't about one heroic day in the gym. It was about showing up multiple times a week, putting in the reps, making that little marginal improvement again and again and again.
So over a few years, his 6'4" frame goes from, what, 170 pounds up to a solid 200.
Yeah, and it wasn't a miracle. It was just consistency, amplified by time.
And the timeline here is what's so compelling. These little habits, they stack up, they compound. By his junior year in college, he's a team captain. He's an all-conference player.
And then by senior year, this is 6 years after the coma, he's named the top male athlete at the entire university. He's an academic All-American. He wins the President's Medal, which is the school's highest honor.
That trajectory is just, it's unbelievable. From being in a coma and cut from the high school team to the university's top athlete.
And that transformation, it didn't come from one big moment of inspiration. It wasn't a fad diet. It was a gradual evolution driven by this long series of tiny daily choices that all added up.
And that right there, that's the core idea we're diving into. The power of the atomic habit.
So let's take that personal story and kind of translate it into the bigger framework. This whole idea of atomic habits is really founded on a principle you hear a lot about in high-performance circles.
Right, the aggregation of marginal gains.
The aggregation of marginal gains, and a concept that was really popularized by Sir Dave Brailsford. He was brought on in 2003 to turn around British cycling.
And when you say turn around, that is a huge understatement. The organization was, it was a global embarrassment.
It really was. Think about their history. British riders had won a single Olympic gold medal in cycling. One. Since 1908.
And in the Tour de France, the biggest race in the world, over 110 years, a British cyclist had never, ever won.
Their reputation was so bad, the source notes this, that a major European bike manufacturer literally refused to sell them bikes.
You're kidding.
Nope. They were afraid that if the British team was seen using their bikes, it would actually hurt their brand. They were that associated with failure.
Wow. Okay, so that sets the stage for Brailsford's strategy. And he didn't come in promising some huge revolutionary change.
No, his whole philosophy was the tiny margin of improvement in everything you do. His core idea was that if you break down everything that goes into riding a bike and improve each tiny little piece by just 1%,
the combined effect would be transformative.
Exactly. And what's so fascinating is just how deep they went, how exhaustive this approach was. They started with the obvious things, sure.
Like redesigning the bike seats for more comfort, rubbing alcohol on the tires for a little bit better grip.
Right. But they very quickly dove into the obscure, the unexpected. They realized that maintaining ideal muscle temperature was critical, so they developed electrically heated overshorts for the riders.
So their muscles are always at the perfect temperature, even between events.
Always. Then they moved to clothing. They tested fabrics in a wind tunnel and found that the indoor racing suits, the really light aerodynamic ones, were marginally faster.
So they had their outdoor road racers switch to indoor gear.
Yep, just for that tiny edge. It was about relentless optimization of every single component.
And not just the machine, but the human system, too.
Oh, absolutely. They tested different massage gels to see which one led to the fastest muscle recovery. They were maniacal about preventing illness. They hired a surgeon.
Wait, a surgeon? Not to fix injuries, but...
No, to teach the team the most medically rigorous way to wash their hands.
That seems almost absurd. Teaching elite athletes how to wash their hands.
It does, but think about it. One sick day is a lost training day. A 1% reduction in colds over a year, that compounds into huge performance gains.
Okay, that makes sense. The level of detail is just, it really proves the point.
It keeps going. They figured out the perfect pillow and mattress for each individual rider, and they brought them to every single hotel on the road to guarantee perfect sleep.
And the most famous example, the one everyone talks about.
The white truck. They painted the inside of the team's mechanic truck bright white.
And the reason was so they could spot any tiny speck of dust.
That might degrade the performance of the finely tuned bikes. It was about creating an environment where perfection was just the default setting.
So after all this exhaustive program of tiny 1% improvements, what happened? What were the results?
They were just staggering. Only 5 years after Brailsford took over at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, the British team won 60% of all the available gold medals in cycling.
60%?
60%. And the momentum just kept building. At the London 2012 Olympics, they set 9 Olympic records and 7 world records. That same year, Bradley Wiggins becomes the first Brit ever to win the Tour de France.
And then his teammate, Chris Froome, just dominates for the next few years.
Yeah, he wins 4 of the next 5. So between 2007 and 2017, you're looking at 178 world championships and 66 Olympic or Paralympic gold medals. It's an impossible turnaround.
You can't attribute that to luck. It's not one good athlete. It was the system, the aggregation of all those marginal gains.
Which brings us to the math behind it all, the mathematical proof of why this works. If you try to get better in one huge leap, you're probably going to fail. But if you get just 1% better every single day for a year,
You end up 37 times better than when you started.
37 times. It's an exponential curve.
That 37x number, it's impressive, but it's hard to really wrap your head around what that means in your own life. We kind of misunderstand the impact of small choices.
We do. If you save $100 today, you don't really feel it. But if you repeat that tiny behavior every day, the results aren't just additive, they're multiplicative. It's exponential.
And the flip side is just as dramatic and maybe more scary.
Oh, yeah. If you get 1% worse every day, if you slide by just that tiny amount, you don't just end up a little worse, you degrade almost to zero.
You end the year with less than 3% of what you started with.
Yeah.
So habits really are the compound interest of self-improvement.
And that interest works both ways, positive and negative.
This is why the source really hammers home this idea of trajectory over your current results. We judge ourselves by where we are right now, our weight, our bank account.
But those are just lagging measures of your past habits. They tell you where you've been. They don't tell you where you're going.
The results you see today are a reflection of a system you were running months or even years ago. What really matters is the path you're on right now.
The airplane analogy in the source is perfect for this. Imagine you're flying from LA to New York City.
Okay.
The pilot adjusts the nose of the plane just 3.5 degrees south. It's such a tiny change, nobody on the plane would even feel it.
Right, completely unnoticeable.
But that tiny 3.5-degree difference compounded over the thousands of miles of the flight means you don't land in New York, you land in Washington, D.C.
Hundreds of miles off course from a change you couldn't even perceive.
Exactly. Time magnifies that margin between success and failure. So your current results matter less than your current trajectory.
And this is the double-edged sword of compounding. It's working for you or against you all the time.
Right. On the positive side, think about productivity. You automate one small task at work, saves you 10 minutes a day. Over a year, that's almost 50 hours of mental energy you just got back.
Or knowledge. Warren Buffett talks about this. Knowledge builds up like compound interest. The more you learn, the faster you can connect new ideas. Reading one book a month seems small, but over a decade, that's 120 books of cumulative wisdom.
And relationships, too. Being just a little bit kinder or more reliable in every interaction over years builds this incredibly strong network. You don't see the benefit from one act, but from hundreds.
Okay, but what about the negative side? Because that's often harder to see.
It's way more insidious. Take stress, little daily anxieties, the constant notifications on your phone, the annoying commute, not quite enough sleep. Each one is manageable on its own.
But when they persist for years, they compound into serious health issues. High blood pressure, chronic fatigue. It wasn't one bad day. It was the aggregation of 1,000 slightly stressful days.
And our thoughts work the same way. If you're constantly telling yourself, I'm not good enough or I'm going to fail, you're building a neural pathway. You get trapped in these negative thought loops that compound into real-world inaction.
And even on a societal level, outrage compounds. Big social breakdowns. They're rarely about one single event.
Right. They're the result of a long series of microaggressions, small indignities that build and build under the surface until one final event tips the scale, and all that compounded anger just erupts.
So understanding that time is magnifying whatever you feed it, positive or negative, that's the key to seeing why these tiny atomic habits matter so much.
We just laid out the math. 1% better gets you 37 times better. So if it's that clear, why is it so hard? Why do we start a new habit and then just quit after a couple of weeks?
It's because our expectations are just completely wrong.
Yeah.
We have this illusion of linear progress. We think if we put in 10 units of effort, we should get 10 units of results right now.
But that's not how it works. In the early days of any compounding process, the results are almost always delayed. And this leads us straight into what the source calls the valley of disappointment.
The valley of disappointment. I like that. You're putting in the work, you're going to the gym, you're saving money, but the scale doesn't move. The bank account barely grows.
And that gap between the effort you're putting in and the results you're seeing, that's where most people quit. They think, this isn't working.
When the reality is that the most powerful outcomes are, by their very nature, delayed.
Yeah.
You have to get through that valley.
Exactly. And we need some good analogies to really grasp this, because emotionally it feels like failure when it's actually just preparation.
The ice cube analogy is perfect.
It is. Imagine an ice cube in a cold room. The temperature slowly starts to rise from 25 degrees to 28, 30, 31 degrees Fahrenheit.
And nothing happens.
Yeah.
The ice cube is still an ice cube. All your effort seems wasted.
But then you hit 32 degrees. And that 1 degree shift, which feels no different than the ones before it, suddenly unlocks this massive visible change. The ice starts to melt.
All that earlier warming wasn't wasted. It was stored energy.
It was stored energy. And personal change is exactly the same. You can exercise for 2 months and see nothing on the scale. But internally, your cardiovascular system is getting stronger. Your resilience is building. You're storing the work. You have to push past 31 degrees.
The bamboo example is another great one. It's even more dramatic.
Yeah, for the first 5 years after you plant bamboo, you see almost nothing. It looks like a total failure. But that's because all the work is happening underground. It's building this massive, complex root system.
And then suddenly, in a period of about 6 weeks, it explodes 90 feet into the air.
And everyone sees the 90-foot rise and thinks it was an overnight success. They ignore the 5 years of invisible foundation building.
And the geological one, the tectonic plates, that shows the power of stored tension.
Right. They grind against each other for millions of years, building up pressure. And then one day, an earthquake erupts, releasing all that stored potential at once.
So this is what the source calls the plateau of latent potential. Your work isn't wasted, it's being stored.
Right. The person who quits their investment plan after 6 months because the returns are small is like the person who heats the ice from 25 to 31 degrees and then gives up because it hasn't melted yet.
Mastery requires patience. It requires that faith to just keep hitting the rock even when you don't see a crack.
And this is perfectly captured by that quote from Jacob Riis that the San Antonio Spurs have in their locker room.
Oh, the stonecutter quote. It's so good.
It's the best. When nothing seems to help, I go and look at a stonecutter hammering away at his rock, perhaps 100 times without as much as a crack showing in it. Yet at the 101st blow, it will split in two.
And I know it was not that last blow that did it, but all that had gone before.
That's it. That's the mindset shift. The 101st blow only works because of the 100 that came before it.
And this idea leads us directly into another huge concept from the source. Goalless thinking. Or, prioritizing systems over goals.
Right. We're all taught to set goals, smart goals, visualize the finish line. But the argument here is that your results have very little to do with your goals and almost everything to do with your systems.
So goals are the destination, what you want to achieve. Systems are the daily habits, the process that gets you there.
Exactly. If you're a student, the goal is an A on the exam. The system is your study schedule, your note-taking method, your review process.
So the source poses this question. If you're a basketball coach and you totally ignore the goal of winning the championship and you focus only on the system, what your team does at practice every day, would you still succeed?
And the answer is a resounding yes. Legendary coaches like Bill Walsh lived by this. His famous line was, "The score takes care of itself." If you want better results, stop obsessing about the results and start obsessing about the process.
Goals give you direction, but systems make the progress.
And there are 4 big problems with having a goals-first mentality that the source really breaks down.
Okay, what's problem number 1?
Winners and losers have the same goals. Every single athlete at the Olympics wants to win the gold medal. Every entrepreneur wants to build a successful company. The goal doesn't separate them.
That's a great point. It's survivorship bias. We only look at the winners and assume their goal was the key, but we ignore the thousands who had the exact same goal and failed.
Exactly. The goal of winning the Tour de France was shared by every team. What made British cycling different was their system of continuous small improvements.
So problem 2, achieving a goal is only a momentary change.
Yeah, think about cleaning a messy room. The goal is a clean room. You get motivated, you do it, and for a moment, you've succeeded.
But if you haven't changed the underlying system, the sloppy habits that made the room messy in the first place, it's just going to get messy again in a week.
Right, you're treating the symptom, not the cause. You have to fix the inputs. If you fix the system, the outcome takes care of itself.
Okay, problem number 3. Goals restrict your happiness.
This one is huge. When we're goal-focused, we're basically telling ourselves, I can only be happy after I reach this milestone.
So happiness is always deferred. It's always somewhere in the future, after the next promotion, the next weight loss target.
It creates this unhealthy either-or situation. Either you succeed and you're happy, or you fail and you're a disappointment. But a systems-first approach lets you find satisfaction in the process itself. If you're running your system, you can be satisfied right now.
And the last one, problem 4, is that goals are at odds with long-term progress.
This is the yo-yo effect. The marathon runner who trains like a maniac for months, and then after the race, they stop completely. The goal is done, so the system collapses.
The goal was to finish the game. But the point of a good system is to keep playing the game for life. True long-term thinking is goalless thinking. It's about endless refinement.
Right. And all this brings us back to that core definition. We know we fall to the level of our systems, and the components of those systems are atomic habits.
And that word atomic has that great dual meaning.
It does. First, it means an extremely small amount, like an atom, the marginal gain, the 1%.
But it also means the source of immense power and energy, like nuclear energy.
Exactly. So atomic habits are these tiny, easy-to-do actions that are also the fundamental building blocks of a much larger system of compound growth. They're small, but their cumulative power is explosive.
Okay, so we've talked about systems over goals, but the source goes even deeper than that.
Yeah.
It argues that for change to really stick, you have to work on the most fundamental layer of all.
Right, the layer of identity.
This is visualized as an onion, or a target, with 3 layers, and most people try to change from the outside in.
They start with the outer layer, which is outcomes. This is your results. Losing weight, publishing a book, whatever.
The middle layer is processes. This is your systems, your habits, your gym routine, your writing schedule.
But the core, the deepest layer, is identity. This is about your beliefs, your worldview, your self-image.
And the direction you try to change from matters a lot. Most people use what are called outcome-based habits. They focus on what they want to achieve. I want to lose 20 pounds.
The more effective way, the way that actually lasts, is to use identity-based habits. You start from the inside out. You focus on who you wish to become.
It sounds like a small shift in language, but the difference in power is just monumental.
But let's use the classic example from the book, quitting smoking. Someone offers you a cigarette.
Okay, the first person, the one using an outcome-based approach, says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit."
What does that tell you about their identity?
It tells me they still see themselves as a smoker. A smoker who is currently resisting, but a smoker nonetheless.
Exactly. There's an internal conflict there. They're trying to change their behavior while holding on to the same underlying belief system. And that friction is almost impossible to sustain.
So what does the second person say? The one using an identity-based approach.
They say, no thanks, I'm not a smoker.
It's a completely different statement.
A complete shift in identity. Smoking is part of a former self. It's not who they are today. There's no conflict, no friction. The decision is already made at the deepest level.
So behavior that's out of sync with your self-image just won't last.
It won't. You can force yourself to do something for a while, but if you fundamentally believe you're, say, an undisciplined person, you'll always be pulled back toward habits that confirm that belief. You have to change who you believe you are.
It feels easier to just go back to that negative but familiar identity than it is to sustain a positive one that still feels fake.
We crave internal consistency. We need our habits to line up with our beliefs.
There's a great little anecdote in the source about this with an entrepreneur named Brian Clark who used to bite his nails.
Right? For decades. He'd tried to stop a bunch of times with willpower, but it never stuck. The habit always came back.
And the thing that finally broke it for good was something totally unexpected. He got a professional manicure.
For the first time ever. And the result was his nails looked nice. And for the first time, he felt proud of them.
And that pride was the key. It wasn't about willpower anymore.
No. Once he became the type of person who has nice hands, he was intrinsically motivated to protect that new identity. Pride maintained the habit where willpower had failed over and over again.
So the real goal isn't just to have the thing like the clean room. It's to become the person, the tidy, organized person.
Exactly. And we have to be aware of these negative identities we carry around without even thinking about it. We tell ourselves these stories, I'm not a morning person, or I'm just bad with money.
And those stories become self-fulfilling prophecies. They create this internal pressure to act in a way that confirms the story.
So even if a good habit makes perfect rational sense, if it conflicts with one of those deep-seated identities, you'll almost always find a way to self-sabotage.
So how do you actually change your identity? It's not like you can just flip a switch.
No, it's a process.
Right.
And it's a two-step process that's built on the power of these small atomic actions.
Okay, step 1.
First, you decide the type of person you want to be. You get clear on your desired identity. Do you want to be someone who is consistent, healthy, creative, reliable?
And step 2 is you prove it to yourself with small wins.
This is where the magic happens. We think our identity is fixed, but it's not. It's learned. It's conditioned by our experiences.
The word identity itself even hints at this.
It does. It comes from the Latin root essentitas, which means being, and identitum, which means repeatedly.
So your identity is literally your repeated beingness.
It's just the sum of your habits over time. And here's the practical application. Every single action you take is like a vote for the type of person you want to become.
So if you sit down and write one sentence, you've just cast a vote for, I am a writer.
Exactly. If you do 5 push-ups, you cast a vote for, I am an athlete. If you put your dish in the dishwasher instead of the sink, you cast a vote for, I am a tidy person.
And the key is, you don't need a unanimous election. You don't have to be perfect. You just need a majority of the votes to be in favor of your desired identity.
These small habits matter because they are concrete evidence of a new identity. The most practical way to change who you are is to change what you do.
Let's make that really practical. Take weight loss. Instead of focusing on the number on the scale, the outcome.
You shift the focus to identity. You ask, who is the type of person that is healthy? And then you ask, what does that person do?
The source tells the story of a friend who lost over 100 pounds by using that exact question as her guide.
Yeah, throughout her day, she would just constantly ask herself, what would a healthy person do right now? Would a healthy person take the stairs or the elevator? Would a healthy person order the salad or the fries?
And that question became her filter for daily decisions. She figured if she just acted like a healthy person for long enough.
Eventually, she would become one. She didn't have to wait for the result. She just started casting votes every single day with every small choice.
And that completes the feedback loop. Your habits shape your identity, and then your new identity makes it easier to stick with your habits.
Right. It's all about becoming, not just having.
So we've covered the why, the power of compounding, the importance of identity. Now we have to get into the how, the actual mechanics of how a habit is formed.
And to do that, we have to go way back to 1898, and the work of a psychologist named Edward Thorndike.
With his GATS and the puzzle box.
The famous puzzle box experiment. He'd put a hungry cat inside a box, and the only way for it to get out and get to a bowl of food was to perform some simple action, like pulling a string or pressing a lever.
So at first the cat is just kind of freaking out. It's exploring, clawing at the bars. It's all trial and error.
A lot of neurological activity. It's consciously trying to solve the problem, and eventually, by accident, it hits the lever, the door opens, and it gets the reward, freedom, and food.
But Thorndike didn't just do this once. He did it hundreds of times. And over time, the cat's behavior changed.
It made fewer errors, its actions got quicker, more automatic. It learned to go straight to the solution. I think one cat, cat 12, went from taking a minute and a half to escape down to just 6 seconds.
And this repetitive training led to the foundational rule of habit formation. Thorndike called it the law of effect.
Which basically says that behaviors followed by satisfying consequences tend to be repeated, and behaviors followed by unpleasant consequences tend to be avoided. Our brains are hardwired to repeat what feels good.
So a habit is just a mental shortcut that the brain learns through experience. It's an automated solution to a recurring problem.
Right. When you first encounter a problem, you have to think your way through it. But once you stumble on a solution that works, a reward, the brain catalogs it. It creates a little mental rule. If this happens, then do that.
And the whole point of this automation is to reduce cognitive load. The brain wants to save its conscious attention for new, important stuff.
Exactly. It wants to free you up for creativity, for dealing with threats, for critical thinking. So it automates the recurring, boring decisions.
So habits aren't restrictive. They actually create freedom. By automating where you put your keys, you free up mental space for bigger problems.
Exactly. And this whole automation process follows a very predictable 4-step neurological feedback loop. The habit loop.
Okay, what's step 1?
Step 1 is the cue. This is the trigger, the piece of information that predicts a reward. Your phone buzzes, you smell coffee, you walk into a certain room. The cue initiates the whole process.
Step 2 is the craving. This is the motivational force. And the source makes a really critical distinction here. You don't crave the habit itself. You crave the change in your internal state that it delivers.
Yes. You don't crave smoking a cigarette. You crave the feeling of relief from stress. You don't crave scrolling Instagram. You crave the relief from boredom or the feeling of connection. The craving is the desire to change how you feel.
Step 3 is the response. This is the actual habit you do, whether it's a physical action or just a thought. And it only happens if you're able to do it and if the craving is strong enough to overcome the friction.
And finally, step 4 is the reward. The reward is the end goal. It does two things. First, it satisfies the craving. It gives you that feeling of relief or pleasure.
And second, it teaches the brain. It closes the loop. The reward tells your brain, hey, that sequence of actions was useful. Remember it for next time.
If any one of those 4 steps fails, a habit won't form. No cue, the habit never starts. No craving, no motivation, too difficult, you won't do it. No reward, the brain won't bother to remember it.
We could break that loop into 2 phases, right?
Yep, the problem phase, which is the cue and the craving, your brain recognizes there's a problem to be solved.
And the solution phase, the response and the reward. You take action and get the feedback that solves the problem.
And this loop is running constantly, every moment you're awake. And this understanding gives us the practical operating manual, the 4 laws of behavior change.
They come directly from manipulating those 4 steps.
Exactly. To build a good habit, you need to 1, make it obvious, the cue. 2, make it attractive, the craving. 3, make it easy, the response. And 4, make it satisfying, the reward.
And to break a bad habit, you just invert those laws. Make it invisible, make it unattractive, make it difficult, and make it unsatisfying.
This is the framework. It applies to everything. Any challenge you have is, at its root, a behavioral challenge, and these 4 laws are the roadmap to solving it.
Okay, let's dive into the practical application, starting with that first law for building good habits. Make it obvious. The biggest barrier for a lot of us isn't motivation, it's just the lack of awareness, the invisible cue problem.
For sure. Once a habit is automatic, our brain just stops paying attention to it. We fall into these old patterns before we even realize what's happening. They become non-conscious reflexes.
The source has so many good examples of this, like the paramedic who saw a faint pattern in her father-in-law's face and just knew he was about to have a heart attack.
Right. She couldn't explain why she knew, but her brain had automated that pattern recognition over years of experience.
Or the retail clerk who was so used to cutting up used gift cards that when a customer handed her a real credit card, she just automatically cut it in half.
Total autopilot. Or the former lifeguard who found himself yelling "walk" at kids running in his office building. The old training just takes over.
The psychologist Carl Jung said it best, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. We have to start by just seeing what's actually directing us.
And to fight that invisibility, we need tools. The source gives us a couple of powerful ones to start with. The first is called pointing and calling.
This is the system the Japanese railways use, right? Famous for their safety record.
That's the one. It's so simple, it sounds silly. The train operators literally point at a signal and call out its status aloud. Signal is green. Speed is 45.
They're engaging multiple senses, sight, voice, hearing.
And that simple act reduces errors by up to 85%. It forces a non-conscious observation into a conscious, deliberate action.
So for you listening, you can use this. If you have a bad habit you're struggling with, you force yourself to say it out loud before you do it. You reach for a cookie, and you have to stop and say, I am about to eat this cookie, and it will hurt my health goals.
Hearing yourself say it breaks the spell. It stops the mindless drift into the old routine by forcing a moment of conscious awareness.
Okay, so that's tool number 1. What's tool 2?
The habit scorecard. This is a really simple but often very eye-opening exercise. You just take a piece of paper and you list everything you do in a typical day.
Everything. From wake up, check phone, make coffee, stare out the window.
Everything. Then you go back through the list and you mark each habit with a plus for a good habit, a minus for a bad one, and an equal sign for a neutral one.
And the key here is not to judge yourself, but to be honest about whether a habit is effective or not.
Right. Mindlessly scrolling social media is very effective at solving the short-term problem of boredom. But it's very ineffective for your long-term goal of being focused, so it gets a minus.
The key question to ask for each one is, does this behavior help me become the type of person I wish to be? Does it cast a vote for or against my desired identity?
Exactly. And once you have that awareness, you need a clear plan for the new habits you want to build. This is where clarity beats motivation every time.
We think we lack motivation, but often we just lack clarity. We say, I should exercise more. But that's not a plan, it's a wish.
It's too vague. It relies on you feeling motivated, which is totally unreliable. This is why you need an implementation intention, a specific plan for when and where you will act.
And the data on this is just undeniable.
It is. That 2001 British study on exercise is the classic example. They had 3 groups, the control group, a motivation group, and a third group that formed an implementation intention.
And the first 2 groups exercised about 35–38% of the time.
But the third group, the one that made a specific plan, they exercised at a 91% rate, more than double. just from deciding in advance when and where they would do it.
So the formula is super simple. I will behavior at time and location.
You turn a vague goal like, I want to meditate more, into a concrete plan. I will meditate for 1 minute at 7 a.m. in my kitchen.
It removes the decision-making in the moment. The time and location become the cue.
And you can take this a step further and chain habits together using a technique called habit stacking.
This comes from the Diderot effect, which is a fascinating story.
Yeah, the French philosopher Denis Diderot gets a bunch of money and buys this beautiful scarlet robe. And the robe is so nice that it makes all his other stuff look shabby.
So he starts upgrading everything else to match the robe. A new chair, new rugs, new art. One purchase triggers a chain reaction of consumption.
So the Diderot effect shows that no behavior happens in isolation. One action is often the cue for the next one. We can use that to our advantage.
So the formula for habit stacking is, after current habit, I will new habit.
Right. You don't need a time or a place to be the cue. The cue is the completion of a habit you already do automatically.
So instead of just hoping you'll feel like working out, you stack it. After I take off my work shoes, I will immediately change into my workout clothes. Taking off your shoes, which you do anyway, becomes the trigger.
Or for mental health. After I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 60 seconds. The powerful existing habit of making coffee becomes the obvious cue for the new habit.
And you can use situations too. When I see a set of stairs, I will take them instead of the elevator.
You can chain these together to build a whole routine. After I finish dinner, I will put my plate directly in the dishwasher. Stat 1. After I put my plate away, I will wipe down the counter. Stack 2. After I wipe the counter, I will set out my coffee mug for tomorrow.
You're creating this chain reaction of positive habits where one just flows into the next. You're making the next right action obvious and unavoidable. You're constantly casting those votes for the person you want to become.
So if we pull all of this together, what we've really established in this deep dive is this pretty radical shift in perspective.
Right. That true lasting change doesn't come from some bolt of lightning, some sudden inspiration. It's not about willpower. It's about shifting your focus from chasing results, your goals, to just relentlessly refining your systems.
We saw the undeniable math of the marginal gain, that 1% improvement every single day compounding over time. That is the engine of remarkable results.
But you have to have the patience. You have to have the faith to push through that plateau of latent potential, that valley of disappointment where it feels like nothing is happening.
And maybe most critically, we learned that habits aren't really about having something, the clean house, the finished book. They're about becoming someone.
Every tiny action, every atomic habit is a vote you cast for the kind of person you want to be. And that change only sticks when the habit lines up with your new core identity.
So if we accept that our results will always fall to the level of our systems, then the question you have to ask yourself today is this. What small, seemingly insignificant habit can you make obvious right now?
What's the next vote you can cast for the future self you want to build?
And don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for the perfect time. Use the clarity we've just talked about. Right now, think of one thing you already do every single day without fail.
Pouring that coffee, taking off your shoes, sitting down at your desk.
And just apply the habit stacking formula. After I do that thing I already do, I will do this new tiny thing.
Start that process today. It doesn't matter how small the new habit is, because the real power of an atomic habit isn't in the size of the action itself. It's in the continuity of the system that it helps you build.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you'll start making those small changes today and just watch the compounding begin.